Yeah, I'll just give you a little lay of the land of where I'm going to go with this presentation. I'm going to run through some general rules and principles around content marketing. Then I'm going to do a look at all then and now, and spend most of my time, I hope, on case studies, a couple of case studies, and then I've distilled some of the lessons out of those case studies and some resources and helpful bits at the end. I thought we could maybe do a live case study on somebody here, if somebody wants to volunteer their brand, and we could collectively brainstorm how you could put a content strategy around that, but we'll see if we've got time for that, and questions at the end, of course. So these are the general rules and principles, and I must say the reason I've done that is, or put it under this group, is because there's no real logical progression now between these slides. It's just a bunch of ideas sort of thrown one after the other. I've tried quite hard to simplify some of this as much as possible, so I hope I haven't oversimplified it, but if I have, you can let me know. So content marketing is defined by the Content Marketing Institute as the practice of creating relevant and compelling content in a consistent fashion to a targeted buyer, focusing on all stages of the buying process from brand awareness through to brand evangelism. Content marketing is not about overtly selling, but about being the trusted source for the target audience. And there's a whole lot of research from all these institutes around the globe that they say that content is about getting reach on creative, attention-getting comms that consistently reinforce the brand over time, and that starts with content. Content is a key investment. There's more research which shows that content generation is now one of the biggest chunks of budget expenditure. Again, there's more lies and damn statistics here, because according to the stats that I was referring to, which is the CMO, IBM, and I don't know, I guess it's not clear what is the 100%, in other words, how they're breaking that up, but the content was the biggest chunk of allocated budget, followed by 11% spend on advertising, traditional advertising, 11% on digital advertising, and 11% on events and traditional stuff, and then the rest of the other 50% is on other bits and pieces. But it's just interesting that, again, people are increasingly cottoning onto the fact that spending money on generating real content that actually engages people and speaks to them where they're at is where the value really lies, because that's where you get the organic search. I was reflecting actually also through Charlie's presentation that, because my background is more traditional, well, first I was a journalist and then I crossed over to the dark side and I became a PR person. So I'm sort of operating in the PR world, and we always like to tell everybody that actually PR is so much more valuable than advertising, because obviously when somebody reads your article in a newspaper, they don't know that you're selling to them, and they also make the false assumption that the editors have actually vetted it and they think it's interesting, so therefore you must think it's interesting too. So if you're in the PR space, you know that traditionally we measure AVE, and you put on up to 14 times the value of how much it would cost to place an ad. PR agencies like to tell you that the value of the PR piece is up to 14 times more than the advert in the same sort of space in the newspaper. I've never really bought that personally, but I usually just measure one-to-one. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I find that I was thinking that that organic search, again, to me, is almost like the new holy grail. It's the same thing that PR achieves, which is that kind of, it's almost like covert selling. It's like, you getting people, you taking them along in a way without saying to them, do this. Because people, I suspect maybe we don't really like to be told what to do on the whole, human beings. Maybe that's why that works. Okay, so just to recap, there's the golden thread. Content is the golden thread. Content has to be always on. Content is definitely not about selling. And content is about building trust. So this whole trust thing, Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England, once apparently said, trust arrives by foot and leaves by Ferrari. So I think that's a comment that marketers identify with. Have you spent years sometimes building up trust, and then one bad thing happens, and boom. So a little reflection on the then and the now. Because essentially what I've just said, in some ways, there's nothing new, It's like the world is always, the world of marketing, the basic principles haven't really changed, I don't think. But what's really changed is the lay of the land. And again, I think Charlie's slide with that explosion of little round circles said it quite nicely. So, then you had a little bit more parochial, local focus. your focus was often more specialist or siloed, planned and predictable. You have like marketing, that's the next slide. But nowadays it's really global, multi-channel and agile. And how do you actually adapt from that kind of a little bit more staid to just to the opposite of staid? So here in the then space, you've got paid and earned, which is what now people call paid and earned, which traditionally would have been PR and advertising. And, the sort of below and above the line, the division between a below and above the line. I don't know about the rest of you, but I haven't heard anyone use the term below or above the line recently. It's like it's occurred to me the other day that actually the line is just blown up, it's been obliterated. There's not even any through the line. It's just everything all the time. So, and obviously the focus has moved to that owned and that shared platform, which is really the social media, the conversations, and the media or the channels that you own, the content that you can own, which is where all your content sort of starts from. And I'll say more about that just now. So, all very well. What are the main challenges that confront us in this space? Obviously, visibility is a huge one because you've just got so many people to compete with. Maybe previously you were just competing with the guys down the road, but now you're actually competing with everybody in the world. It's a little bit overwhelming. Then coordination becomes a really key skill in this space. It's like you've got so much on the go. How do you actually coordinate? Quality control is one of the key things. Again, in the content space, I find we spend a huge amount of time in my agency managing just the small details of grammar and spelling. I mean, it sounds strange, but it's kind of critical out there. What other people have spoken about as well, the kind of budgets are static, but the stakes are really, really high. It's that trust, that Ferrari, which is parked outside all the time, waiting to whisk away your trust to customers. The stakes are very high because you can make a mistake, but your mistakes are suddenly very, very visible. So we've got to make everything work much harder. Okay, here's another random slide. The 4 Ps of content marketing. I like this. It was from this website, Econ Consultancy, which just talks about positioning, passion, paid, and perseverance. And I thought these points were worth making before we move on to the case studies. So the one is around, the positioning is not around channels. It's more around, what is your brand personality? And it makes the point of don't try and compete with brands that are hugely successful already, like Jamie Oliver, for instance. You don't want to try and compete in that space because you won't win. And the next one is passion. I mean, it's super important to actually find something about your brand that really you can be passionate about and that you can communicate that passion to people so that you can really start that conversation. And the paid one is the point, which is that much as we'd all like to abandon paid forever and a day, actually the paid stuff is still very important as a channel that can help to drive certain things. And then the perseverance is the end. You can't expect things to happen overnight. You must be prepared for the long haul. Okay, so this I just wanted to also share. I think that the slide I like to if you need to return at any point after this presentation yourselves to this is how, if you need to set up a content strategy, these are the kinds of the 3 points that you'd serve yourself well to actually consider as you put together a strategy. Again, I borrowed this from the Duke Corporate Education guys. I happened to watch a content seminar with them about 2 weeks ago, which I thought was really insightful. It's another example of how online and content marketing is so powerful because it's there, it's accessible. This was a free seminar that I could log into, gain a whole lot of new information that I didn't have before, and now I'm sharing it with all of you. So, lucky you. So, 3 considerations towards a winning strategy. You need to, first of all, to think of that content, which involves understanding and knowing the channels where you control the content. And that includes your website, your magazines, your newsletters, your email campaigns. Those are all the things where you literally you can control it. You don't have to. You're not dependent on the journalists writing what you want them to write. You're not dependent on your users liking you necessarily or hating you. You really have full control over that. So knowing that's where you can start with your content. you need to be very clear what your editorial mission is, and then understand how you align around that, how you're going to kind of cascade that out. There's this idea of you need to be sure that you've got a pipeline schedule and plan in key events and key elements. I'll make the point again later that you've got to have some planning, but you've also got to be able to be agile, so you've got to be a little bit of both. But you have to have some sort of stakes in the ground in order to have a good content strategy rolling out over a 12-month period. You need to know a little bit about what you want to say, when you want to say it, and then leave some space for response to other stuff. And then you need to understand the life cycle of your content. You're creating it, you're placing it, you're reusing it, and you're archiving it. Like, how are you using that content at every stage? How are you making that content work really, really hard for you? Then you need to understand the context of literally what are the problems you want to help your customers solve, and what are the questions from clients, what kind of questions are coming through from clients, how can we actually help them to solve the questions that they have, which just starts to speak to that whole listen to your clients, surface the concerns of clients, solve their problems. And the experience is around taking that one step further to creating a connected experience for the customers. You know, whether that's on Facebook or on your website or, I don't know, at an event. You know, you want to have those spaces where people can engage with you and also with each other, so that you can really expand the whole circle. And what is everyone's shared experience? Okay, so now just moving on to the case studies. This is I chose these 4 global brands. I'm hoping that everybody recognizes them. Maybe, maybe not. Have you heard of all of these guys? Not. Maybe not Patagonia. Okay. Well, yeah, they're mostly. I shall tell you about Patagonia. They're a very fab company. So they've all recently won an award as well for being content marketers. So it's not just me that thinks their content marketing strategies are effective. It's a whole panel of judges from competition. So they've found solutions to problems. Oh dear, I thought that it died. So Patagonia, they're actually a sort of outdoor apparel company. But more than that, they're one of the first companies that started the whole idea of ethically sourced products. So they're really driving, they're famous actually for, first of all, donating 1% of their total sales or 10% of their profit to environmental groups. They're also very famous for telling their customers not to buy their products, to buy more carefully. And they're very anti the whole sort of consumerist culture, which our whole sort of Western civilization is pretty much premised on, which is buy, 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 buy. So Patagonia is actually trying to do the opposite, to say like not buy, but buy sensibly. So they have a fantastic platform for a content, a start, that passion that I talked about earlier. It's right there at the heart of this brand. They have a fantastic content marketing strategy that they can build around educating their customers why this is a good idea, not a completely crazy idea, why they must actually think more carefully about the products that they're buying, buy less and smarter. So, where to start? Because they're quite a thoughtful brand, I suppose I could say. Their content tends to be a lot more long form. So they have a blog, which is on their website. And if you go and look at it, it's called The Cleanest Line. It's filled with quite detailed stories, and these stories range from hiking, stories about hiking in the wilderness, to environmental stories about how the people that have gone on protest marches about X, Y, and Z. They even sponsored a full-length documentary on people fighting for indigenous lands in the US. So that's the kind of thing that they're actually interested in, and the kind of content that they put out there. And it's really effective because it's speaking exactly to the people that want to hear about what they have to say. I mean, it's connecting with their customers, because the customers really understand and value what they have to say. And the more they say it, the more they buy into the value and passion of the brand, and the more they love the brand. So these are the guys that The YouTube, as I say, they've got user-generated content featuring the Patagonia faithful and in their extremely lived-in apparel. So the Fast Company wrote an article about them which said, like, not many brands can pull off a half-hour video of people telling stories about their favorite pair of 15-year-old swim trunks. And I think that sort of sums it up. I don't know if I'd watch that, to be honest, but I'm not actually a Patagonia customer. But I do approve of the ethos. So I just wanted to share, just to also say that, make the point around how content works in a way. If you invest in the development of that blog, which is what they've done, and they've invested in creating a whole story around themselves as being an ethically aware brand, they get plenty of spin-off coverage for that. So this is just a little snapshot of when you search in Google and you search in news for the news in Google. That's all just a string of current sort of articles that come up. So they're constantly in the news. So they don't have to send out press releases necessarily. They're getting coverage in the news through the so-called earned space because of the passion that they have and because of the stories that they're telling. It's naturally sort of just coming through that way. And then that was a famous ad that they ran quite a few years ago around, what's that awful thing, Black Monday, where they try to con us all into going out and buying a heck of a lot more stuff? Black Friday. Yeah. I know I'm in marketing and I know I actually should be thrilled at that sort of thing, but I'm not, I'm afraid. I have to confess I'm a little bit of a conflicted marketer. I always have been. That's maybe why I like Patagonia so much. But the great thing about this ad was actually made people buy more of their things. So in a weird way, it actually had their wrong effect, or maybe the right effect for them. More people bought their jacket, which in theory is going to last longer than the cheap and nasty one from their competitor. Anyway. Okay, enough of Patagonia. Starbucks. Does actually Swaziland have Starbucks? Doesn't, eh? No. But everyone knows what Starbucks is, right? You've all been to Starbucks at some point. So Starbucks already has a pretty good social media fan base. As you can see, they've got millions of fans, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We've got a blog that offers recipes and information. So they've got a very strong platform upon which to build. But only recently, in the last year or so, have they really gone into, they've taken their content marketing up a layer, and they've done two things. And this starts to, I mean, these guys have obviously got big budgets for which they can do really beautiful and creative things, which are a hell of a lot of fun, I think, actually. And they make great case studies, and I'm well aware that probably we can't do the same thing with some of our smaller budgets, but I think the principles apply. But what they've done is they've linked their brand to like a bigger issue. So they've chosen this issue, and this is against, in the States, it's not happening necessarily in South Africa. They've called it Upstanders, and it's they basically did a whole lot of little video stories of people that are doing great things in their communities. And so they're trying to make the link between, trying to make the coffee brand a little bit more of a caring, community-driven brand. And the Starbucks has always kind of had that whole, one of the core things is around being a community coffee shop. And so that's where they're going with this. This is why they would have landed on this. So their sort of passion, or their unique selling proposition or whatever is around that neighborhood coffee brand. And this is another content thing that they launched, which is so fairly interesting because it's a whole complicated animation series which they did with the writers of The Simpsons. And the link with that is very nice, that the guys that wrote The Simpsons for many years apparently did a lot of their writing in Starbucks coffee shops. So they've got this kind of association with them. So they were leveraging off that story, and then they got these guys to create a whole nother story. They do a lot of kind of absolutely hard selling around coffeeing, like they encourage people to tweet a coffee, so you can tweet somebody a coffee to buy them a coffee. They do very good things around the unicorn latte, which is hot off the press apparently. The PSL for the uninitiators, the pumpkin spice latte, and #Red Cups, and I mean their whole bloody Instagram pages with millions of posts around each of these things. So these are things which people are rallying around. Okay, so the Lego case study. Everybody knows Lego, right? So it's on a quest to become the world's largest toy maker. And it's well on its way. I mean, it's been given a huge boost by the Lego movie, which was a critical and a commercial hit and drove mass purchases of Lego. But what's really interesting about Lego is that they really leverage their users. So this fantastic statistic, which is that Lego fans have created 20 times more videos on YouTube than Lego itself has created. I mean, that's really like the holy grail, hey? When you can just actually let your customers spend their time and money on selling your product. And they've only really managed to do that over years of building that trust and building that relationship and sort of building on that. And the next thing which I'd love to be able to show, I mean, I hope it plays as a video, is for me an example of how they do that. Like the Pepsi ad that they were talking about earlier. You know, if something isn't authentic, especially in this day and age, people will pick up on it really quickly and trample on you. So you have to be very careful in doing this, not to just make stuff up. You actually have to start with the business. And how often I have to tell clients sometimes that, you know, actually there's nothing we can do for your brand until you sort out your business. Because it's not that easy. You can't go into a marketplace and tell stories about how great the business is if the business isn't that great. And I think the rest of the business sometimes doesn't want to hear that. And marketing often gets looked at and siloed, and it's hard, you know, it's a hard balance to, like, we are blamed if we actually don't get the sales, but there's a whole lot of other reasons why the sales might not be coming through. And one of them, I believe, was around that authenticity issue. So that's number one, authenticity, uniqueness. Just a point about reinforcing brand look and feel. I mean, all of the brands there are incredibly well visually branded, very strong visual brands, which comes right down to how the way they use language. And again, I think that Lego personifies that really, really well, and other brands need to figure that out. There's the coordination thing. Managing content in all of its stages through the line becomes a key tool. And then this actually really includes enabling the sales team. So it's about thinking bigger with content marketing. Content marketing is no longer just about, or marketing is not just one thing. You've actually really got to think as inclusively as possible. One of my colleagues here had some integration on one of their slides. I can't remember who it was. But that's true. Everything is becoming more and more integrated. So the sales team, those folk that are often not seen as being part of the marketing team. I've never, again, really understood why people separate sales and marketing to the extent that they do. But, you know, those guys can be media trained. They can be retweeting. They can be connecting with the right people and sharing their success stories. And then most importantly, they need to feed back to you what people are saying. Because that's not my next point. It comes again later. Planning and responsiveness. Like I made that point earlier as well. So you need to be planning in advance, but you also need to be ready to respond. So here Starbucks has a little campaign around Spring Day, for instance, which is an easy day or easy kind of thing to rally around because it's light and fun, it's not political, it's got nothing really going for it, but it's a good opportunity. So this listening from the outside in, that refers to my previous point again about hearing what the clients and the customers are saying. So social media is obviously a great channel for that, but the client relations people are a great channel for that. And I must say, like one of the clients I work for, we've just recently embarked on a whole kind of process of talking to their end user, but like qualitative kind of studies to conversations to try and figure out like what are the things that they are interested in, what are the gaps in their knowledge, and how can my client sort of help to bridge that gap. So that relates to that earlier question I had, which was around ask the question, what do your clients actually need? What are the problems that they are trying to solve? And then actually provide them. Can you provide them with the answer? Leveraging client voice is the user-generated content. I don't need to say more about that. Or actually, I do. The nice comment from some prof saying that that your network, bigger is not better in your network. So the idea is look at who is following you on Twitter, actually. Identify who are the people that are the best connected in your networks, and then ask them, literally approach them and ask them to help you to put the word out, to disseminate the content. So people are there to share messages and campaigns. So those are just my lessons in summary. Oh yeah, and then if I've still got time, have I got time, MC? 2 minutes, okay. So I thought one has to say something about SEO and if you're talking about content marketing because, it's kind of important. So when a searcher asks a question, your content needs to raise its hand in a crowded universe. And there are a few SEO tips. I'm obviously not, it's a whole science in and of itself, but it's a little bit like that Google Analytics thing. It doesn't have to be so complicated. I think people hear SEO and they think like, oh my God, that's too much for me. I can't do SEO. What is SEO? But actually there are masses of tools out there that you can use to help you to bridge the gap. And it's common sense. The first one is the context again, know your customer. The second one is speak to them in the language that they are actually going to hear you in. Don't use jargon, try to speak on a level. Then there's some actual basic things around formatting your content right on the website, getting it H1, H2, H3. All of those kinds of things are important because it's the way Google actually looks at and interprets content. And then the planning of the content, again, as we've spoken about. And on keywords, there's like a whole lot of SEO tools that can help you to basically find out what people are searching for here and now, which can help you to guide the words that you choose to put into your communications. I know it's maybe a little bit more complicated than that, but maybe that just gives you something. And I have to stop now. Thank you.